The doctor said the baby was healthy, but whatever he was seeing on the monitor clearly wasn't normal. My name is Joe. I'm 37, a Marine. I returned from Kandahar 2 weeks ago after spending 8 months overseas. I was sitting in a spotless clinic room in Phoenix, watching my wife Melissa during her ultrasound, when Dr. Bradley Richardson's hands began to tremble like he'd just witnessed something impossible. "Sir, you need to step outside and contact a lawyer right now." Those words tore through me like flying debris. Melissa was still on the exam table, ultrasound gel cold and shiny on her stomach, her eyes moving between the doctor and me, confusion written all over her face. It was the same look she'd been wearing a lot lately, like she was constantly trying to read my thoughts. "Is there a problem with the baby?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Military conditioning does that. Stay calm even when everything is collapsing. Dr. Richardson wiped his brow with his sleeve. The man had been a doctor for 2 decades, judging by the framed credentials behind him. This wasn't his first ultrasound, but his skin had gone pale, and he kept darting his eyes back to the screen as if it held classified data. "The baby is healthy," he said again, then leaned closer and spoke quietly. "But the development shows 32 weeks. The room fell silent except for the steady buzz of medical machines. Melissa was still smiling, still pretending nothing was wrong. She'd been doing that a lot since I came home, pretending. 32 weeks. I repeated it in my head. 32 weeks ago, I was loading equipment onto a military transport headed for Afghanistan. 32 weeks ago, I kissed my wife goodbye at Sky Harbor Airport. 32 weeks ago, I was sleeping in a canvas tent halfway across the world. Dr. Richardson watched me carefully, like he was bracing for anger or violence. Maybe he expected shouting or chaos. Instead, I processed it the way I'd been trained, like intelligence from a mission briefing. "Joe?" Melissa's voice was quiet. "What's happening? Why does everyone look so tense?" I looked at her, really looked. The constant phone checking since I returned. The way she talked about the pregnancy like it was some unexpected blessing. The way she insisted I be present for this appointment. She needed me here for this. The truth settled heavy in my chest. I met Melissa 6 years ago at a barbecue in Tempe. She was a dental hygienist with a laugh that filled the air. Back then, I was stationed at Luke Air Force Base before moving to Camp Pendleton. She used to say she always wanted to marry someone in the military, said she admired the sacrifice. We married 3 years later in a small church ceremony at her parents' place. Simple, nothing extravagant. During our marriage, I deployed twice on short missions. She seemed to handle it well, or so I believed. She sent packages, wrote letters, kept everything together. The kind of wife other Marines talked about with envy. When the Kandahar deployment came up 8 months ago, she cried at the airport. Real tears, not the fake ones I'd learned to spot. She held me tightly and promised she'd be there when I returned. "I'll stay busy," she said. "Maybe take classes. Work on the garden." I remember thinking how fortunate I was. The first month overseas, we video called every few days. She looked exhausted, stressed from being alone, nothing unusual. By the second month, the calls were shorter. She mentioned evening classes at the community college. Pottery, of all things, said it helped her relax. By the third month, communication was mostly brief text messages. "Long day at work, miss you. Everything's okay here." That's what her messages said. I assumed she was settling into life without me. Military spouses learn how to function independently. It's a kind of survival skill. When I got back 2 weeks ago, though, something felt off. She was jumpy, uneasy. She'd put on weight, blamed it on stress eating. Started wearing baggy clothes. Said she wasn't feeling great. Maybe a stomach issue, she thought. Then last week she told me she was pregnant. "I found out just after you left," she said, crying tears of joy. "I wanted to surprise you when you came home." I'm about 10 weeks along. 10 weeks? I'd already been home for almost 2 weeks by then. She'd booked the ultrasound right away. Said she wanted us to experience it together. Our first look. Our child. I felt proud. Happy. Like all that time overseas had led to something good. Coming home to this. Now I was sitting in a medical office, watching my wife on an exam table, realizing the numbers didn't line up. The timeline made no sense. None of it did. Dr. Richardson remained standing, clearly waiting for some kind of response. Melissa kept asking what was happening, her voice rising with each question. Something inside my chest felt like it was cracking, but my expression stayed neutral. Training always takes over. 32 weeks, I said again, mostly to myself. Dr. Richardson nodded. His hands were steady now, but his eyes kept flicking toward the door like he wanted out. Sir, I need to ask, were you present at the time of conception? Melissa's face drained of color. Not confusion, shock, panic. Joe, I don't understand, she said, but her tone had changed. What does 32 weeks mean? I stood up slowly, posture straight, shoulders squared. Muscle memory. It means I was in Afghanistan when this baby was conceived. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the machines seemed to fade. That's impossible, Melissa whispered. She wasn't looking at me anymore. Her eyes were fixed on the ceiling tiles, her hands trembling. I told you I'm 10 weeks pregnant. I got pregnant right before you left. Dr. Richardson cleared his throat. Ma'am, the measurements are very clear. This pregnancy is at 32 weeks. Conception would have occurred approximately 8 months ago. I watched her expression change as the truth caught up to her. The careful version of events she'd built was collapsing in real time. Somewhere along the way she'd miscalculated. Maybe she'd been so focused on maintaining the lie that she forgot to double-check the timeline. There has to be a mistake, she said, pushing herself upright on the table, the paper crinkling beneath her, the machine or something. But my thoughts were already elsewhere. Trevor Williams, the neighbor who helped with yard work while I was gone. She'd mentioned him casually during calls, fixed the fence, moved furniture. A good neighbor, she said. I thought about how our calls got shorter. The pottery classes that always seemed to run late. How determined she was to schedule this ultrasound when I could attend. She wanted me here, wanted me to see the screen, wanted me to believe I was the father, to accept responsibility for a child that wasn't mine. The cold weight in my chest spread outward. Not rage, not yet. Just clarity. The kind you get when you look through a scope and everything snaps into sharp focus. Dr. Richardson, I said calmly, I'll need copies of everything. The images, the measurements, the full report. Joe, what are you doing? Melissa's voice climbed higher. You're frightening me. I looked at her. 6 years of marriage, 3 years of thinking I truly knew her, 8 months of sleeping alone in Afghanistan, while she was sharing a bed with someone else. I'm gathering facts, I said. That's how any proper mission works. I could tell by her eyes she understood it was finished. The drive back was silent at first. Then Melissa started talking, filling the space with excuses that unraveled the longer she spoke. Maybe they mixed up my records with someone else's, she said, wringing her hands. Hospitals mess up all the time. Remember when they sent you that other guy's blood work? I kept my attention on the road. Phoenix traffic crawled along, a normal Tuesday afternoon, people going about their lives while mine was coming apart in the passenger seat. Or maybe the ultrasound machine was miscalibrated, she continued. They're just computers, right? Computers glitch. We pulled into the driveway. The house looked exactly the same. Desert plants, red tile roof. The basketball hoop I'd put up 3 summers ago. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. I shut off the engine and sat there, listening to it tick as it cooled. Joe, please, she said. Say something. You're making me anxious. I turned to her. Really looked this time. The added weight made sense now. The oversized clothes. The way she'd avoided certain positions when we'd been together since I got back. When's the due date? I asked. What? If you're 32 weeks pregnant, when is the baby due? Her mouth opened, then closed. She was calculating, searching for an answer that might still work. The doctor didn't give an exact date, she said finally. About 8 weeks. 32 plus 8 is 40, I said. So 8 weeks. We got out of the truck. I unlocked the door. The house smelled like the vanilla candles Melissa always burned. It smelled like home, but it wasn't anymore. It felt like evidence. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water and stared out the back window. Trevor Williams was in his yard next door, bent over his motorcycle. Mid-40s, divorced a couple years back. Construction work. The guy who'd helped Melissa move patio furniture while I was gone. Do you want me to make lunch? She asked. Her voice was forced, pitched too high. How long have you been sleeping with Trevor? I asked. The glass she was reaching for slipped from her fingers and shattered across the tile. What did you just say? I turned to face her. You heard me. That's crazy, she said quickly. Trevor's our neighbor. He helped me out a few times while you were gone, that's all. I can't believe you'd accuse me of that. But she was backing away as she spoke. Not the posture of innocence. The posture of someone cornered. The baby is yours, she insisted, her voice growing firmer. I don't know what that doctor thinks he saw, but this is your child. We'll get another opinion. We'll see someone else. I knelt down and began collecting the broken glass. The shards were sharp and clear, just like the truth. Melissa, I said quietly, still focused on the floor, I've been trained to gather intelligence, to read situations, to spot lies. This isn't a war zone, she snapped. This is our marriage, our life. I stood up and dumped the glass into the trash. You're right, I said. Over there, when someone lies, they're usually trying to kill you. Here, they're just trying to ruin you. She was crying now. Not the controlled tears from the airport 8 months ago. These were raw, desperate. I love you, she said. No matter what you think happened, I love you. I walked past her toward our bedroom. I'm packing a few things. Where are you going? To get a lawyer. Joe, please, she said. We can fix this. The baby needs a father. I stopped in the doorway. The baby already has one, I said. It just isn't me. That night I stayed at a motel near Luke Air Force Base. Nothing fancy, cheap, clean, familiar. The kind of place I'd slept in dozens of times during training rotations. I knew how to exist in rooms like that. At 7 a.m. I called my attorney, Stephen Parker. He'd handled our home purchase and our wills. Solid guy, former Army. He understood how military lives worked. Joe, he said, what's going on? I laid it all out. The ultrasound, the dates, the math that didn't lie. Jesus, he said when I finished. I'm sorry, brother. That's brutal. I need to know my options. First, we get a DNA test. Establish paternity or non-paternity. Second, we document everything. Ultrasound records, messages, anything she said about the pregnancy. Third, we prepare for divorce. What about the house? Arizona's a community property state, but infidelity can affect how assets are divided, especially if marital funds were used for the affair. We'll need proof. After the call, I drove back to the house. Melissa's car was gone. Probably at work, acting like life was normal. I still had my key. It was still my house. Inside, I went straight to the home office. Melissa kept paperwork in the desk, bills, statements, financial records. I'd never had a reason to look before. What I found made my stomach sink. Credit card charges from restaurants I'd never been to, hotel stays in Scottsdale, receipts for men's clothing, size large. I wore medium. Phone bills showing hundreds of calls to Trevor Williams, starting about a month after I deployed. But the worst item was a receipt from a women's clinic in Tempe, dated 7 months earlier. Prenatal vitamins. A pregnancy test. She'd known almost from the start. She'd had 7 months to figure out what to do. And her plan had been to convince me the baby was mine. I photographed everything with my phone. Evidence, intelligence. I was putting the papers back when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Melissa was home early. I was in the kitchen when she walked in and stopped short. I thought you were staying somewhere else, she said. I came back for a few things. She set her purse down slowly, watching me. Have you been going through my stuff? Should I have? Her expression answered that question. Joe, whatever you think you found, there's an explanation. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo. A restaurant receipt from 5 months ago. Dinner for 2. Paid with our joint card, explain. She glanced at it and went pale. I took my sister out for her birthday. Your sister lives in Tucson. I swiped to the next image. Hotel in Scottsdale. Explain this. She said nothing. Another swipe. Men's clothing. And this? She dropped into one of the kitchen chairs like her legs had given out. The fight drained out of her completely. How long? I asked. Joe, How long have you been sleeping with Trevor? She covered her face with her hands. It wasn't planned, she said quietly. It just happened. How long? About a month after you left. 7 months. Almost my entire deployment. And the baby? I don't know, she said. It could be yours. The timing doesn't work, I said evenly. You know it's not. She looked up at me. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. What are you going to do? I was already heading for the door. Stephen Parker's office was in Scottsdale, 20 minutes away. Glass and steel. Clean lines, the kind of place where serious decisions were made. I have proof, I said, sliding the printed photos across his desk. He reviewed them carefully. Former military understand documentation. This is thorough, he said. Credit cards, phone records, medical receipts. He looked up at me. How are you holding up? I'm operational, I said. He nodded. He understood. Being functional was sometimes the best outcome you could expect. Here's the plan, he said. First, we file for divorce on grounds of adultery. Arizona allows fault-based filings and your evidence is solid. Second, we request a court-ordered DNA test to formally establish non-paternity. Third, we seek reimbursement for any marital funds she used to support the affair. What about the house? With this level of documentation, we can argue for an unequal division. She misused shared assets. Judges take that seriously. How long does this process take? That depends. If she doesn't contest it, it'll move quickly. If she fights, it could drag on for months. I left his office carrying a thick folder and a court date set 3 weeks out. The divorce papers would be delivered to Melissa at her workplace the following day. Clean, professional, no theatrics. That evening, I returned to the house. Melissa was in the kitchen, cooking dinner for 2. She looked up when I walked in, hope flickering in her eyes. I made your favorite, she said. Chicken and rice. I filed for divorce today. The wooden spoon slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Joe, please, she said. Can't we just talk? There's nothing left to talk about. The baby isn't mine. The DNA test will confirm it, but we both already know. She turned off the stove and faced me. What do you want from me? You want me to beg? Fine, I'll beg. Her voice cracked. I was lonely. I was scared. Trevor was there. I made a horrible mistake. 7 months isn't a mistake, I said. 7 months is a decision. I love you. No, you don't. If you did, you wouldn't have spent 7 months sleeping with our neighbor while I was getting shot at overseas. She was crying again, but I felt nothing. Whatever emotion I'd had burned out somewhere, between the ultrasound room and the credit card statements. I was going to tell you, she said. After the baby was born, I was going to tell you everything. You were going to let me raise another man's child for 18 years and then confess? She didn't answer. And that told me enough. I'm staying at a motel until this is resolved, I said. You'll be served tomorrow. You should get your own lawyer. Joe, wait. I paused at the kitchen doorway. What about us? What about our marriage? I looked back at her. 6 years together. 3 years believing I knew her. There is no us, I said. There hasn't been since you chose Trevor Williams. I left her standing there while dinner cooled on the stove. Outside, Trevor was in his driveway again, working on his motorcycle. He glanced up when my truck started. Our eyes met briefly through the windshield. He looked away first. The courtroom was small and clinical. Judge Patricia Hernandez presided. Melissa sat across the aisle beside her attorney, young guy in a tailored suit who looked deeply uncomfortable. Stephen Parker had prepared thoroughly. The evidence was organized clean, undeniable. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel bills, the ultrasound report proving the timeline didn't work, and the DNA results had arrived the week before. Zero probability that the plaintiff is the biological father. Your Honor, Stephen said, the evidence demonstrates that the defendant maintained an extramarital relationship throughout the plaintiff's military deployment, used shared marital funds to support that relationship, and attempted to mislead the plaintiff into believing he was the father of another man's child. Melissa's attorney tried to argue that the affair had no bearing on asset division, but Judge Patricia Hernandez had 2 decades on the bench. She wasn't new to situations like this. The court finds that the defendant's conduct represents a serious violation of the marital bond and a clear misuse of marital resources, she said. Accordingly, the plaintiff is awarded 65% of all marital assets, including exclusive ownership of the marital residence. The defendant is further ordered to reimburse the plaintiff for all funds spent in support of the extramarital relationship. Melissa stared down at the table. There were no tears this time, just resignation. Additionally, the judge continued, the defendant is solely responsible for all medical and birth-related expenses, as the child is not the biological offspring of the plaintiff. The gavel struck. Final. Outside the courthouse, Melissa caught up to me. Joe, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. I'm sorry, she said. I know it doesn't undo anything, but I am. I looked back at her. Her pregnancy was visible now, her stomach rounded beneath a loose dress. In 2 months, she'd have a child. Without a husband and without a father willing to claim responsibility. Sorry doesn't give back 8 months, I said. She nodded and walked away. 3 months later, I signed the final documents at Stephen's office. The house was mine. The accounts were split exactly as ordered. Melissa had moved back to Ohio to live with her parents. Trevor Williams lost his job once word spread through the construction community. Sleeping with the wife of a deployed Marine doesn't earn goodwill, especially in a state tied closely to defense contracts. His ex-wife also learned about the affair during unrelated legal proceedings, which cost him even more in a settlement adjustment. Neighbors later mentioned he'd relocated to Tucson trying to start over. I kept the house for 6 months, then sold it. Too many memories, too much history sealed into the walls. I bought a smaller place near the base, clean, quiet, no past attached. I had my truck, my savings, and a hard lesson about blind trust. Kandahar taught me how to survive in a hostile environment. Coming home taught me survival in a different one. My commanding officer offered me another overseas deployment. I declined. I wanted to stay stateside, take time to decide what came next. Some evenings I'd sit on my back porch and think about the alternate version of events, the life where I believed the lie, raised another man's child, and never learned the truth. That version of me would have lived a future built on deception. I preferred reality even when it was ugly. The military taught me that accurate intelligence leads to better decisions in combat and in life. Melissa's deception failed because she underestimated 2 things: basic mathematics and a Marine's loyalty to facts over fiction. Sometimes the strongest response to betrayal is simply refusing to live inside someone else's lie.